So, Liverpool are in a really weird spot at the minute when it comes to their transfer business. I'm not just talking about the lack of incomings, I'm talking about the outgoings that are potentially going on as well. Welcome back to the CF Woody channel, where we do try and cover all things Liverpool. We do also just generally do football content, so if you are interested, please do consider subscribing. But, more importantly than that, let's talk about the elephant in the room. Liverpool's transfer business has been virtually non-existent, right? You've obviously had the Martin Zubimendi deal. This was the big one throughout the whole of, or at least the last couple of weeks. It's fallen through. I mean, these things happen. We've seen it happen before. We've seen it happen before, particularly with that player. I mean, Zubimendi's been linked to Arsenal. He's been linked to Bayern Munich. Reportedly, two clubs that he said yes to and then said no to. So, I mean, I get it. He doesn't want to leave his boyhood club. Realistically, as Liverpool fans, we kind of have to respect that. Like, we obviously had players in the past that have refused to leave Liverpool to go on to bigger and, at the time, better things. So, these things happen, is the point I'm trying to get to here. It's a bit disappointing. Again, might come off across as a little bit salty even, because obviously I want Liverpool to sign the best players that they can and be as good of a team as they can be, right? And I feel like Zubimendi would have been a big part of that. However, I fear there is a real lack of short-sightedness at the club at the minute, where there's no thought, and they've even come out and essentially outright stated it, there's no backup option to that. I get that when you pick a player that you want, and again, we've seen it in the past with Liverpool, they've selected who they want and they bring them in, right? So you've had it with Alisson, you've had it with Van Dijk. These are players that they've said, look, we want these players, we are willing to wait for that centre-half to become available, etc., etc. But to have no option, it can go both ways. Like, Liverpool are now in a position where there isn't very many number sixes on the market. They're also aware now, all these other clubs, which if they weren't already, they definitely are now, but they're obviously looking to fill a void in that position. So all of a sudden, these prices get another £10 million premium all of a sudden. I think this position itself, when it comes to Liverpool, does kind of sting a little bit more to the core, is the fact that obviously within the last 12 months, they've looked at a plethora of sixes, right? We had the whole Caicedo thing. We had the bid accepted. He said he wanted Chelsea. These things happen. At the same time, we were drip-feeding Lavia, like, couple of other million to Southampton. Eventually, he realised that Liverpool didn't really want him. Liverpool knew they didn't really want him. They just didn't want to be without a six. And then he fucked off to Chelsea too. So this is clearly a problem position for Liverpool. And they seem to be, or at least be becoming, a club that doesn't get their business done early, which is weird because Liverpool have always been known, or at the very least in recent years, they've been known that if they want a player, they go and get them. They get it sorted, they get it over the line, nice and early doors, really. You look at the likes of Fabinho in years gone by, completely thrown under the radar, in he comes, adopts the Jurgen Klopp style of football, bada bing, you've got one of the best CDMs that there's been in the last 5 years. You just do. These are the ways that we're used to having players come in. So to see Liverpool flounder so much on deals is weird, and it's becoming a bit of a habit, and it is a bit concerning. Obviously, the whole lack of signings generally under Schlott, I know a lot of people are concerned about it. I kind of get it. I understand that he wanted to get his full breadth with his team in pre-season. He's done that now. Now's the time to bring in players for the areas that he wants to improve. He's looked at Zubimendi, he's identified that area as a problem position. You would think, coming in, that you would have more than one option to potentially fill that void, especially after having that much time with the team now. So, obviously, Zubimendi has the attributes to do that. There must be other players around that, at the very least, maybe not to the same extent, but to a better quality of standard than what you have can fill that void. That's what's concerning at the minute, is that there's no traction on any other potential defensive midfielders coming into the club. I remember Liverpool supposedly had a list when they identified Zubimendi. I mean, there was rumours of... Frankie de Jong was a hell of an outlandish shout. That was never going to happen. But Ederson at Atalanta was a big one. There's clearly players in the market there that Liverpool can look to sign. It's particularly concerning when they've also said that they're looking to loan out Stefan Bajcetic. Then you have an issue. Bobby Clark's also gone. Again, these aren't players that you're hanging your hats on to play 90 minutes every week in the season, but your depth is disappearing and you're not replacing it. That is a concern. Speaking of the depth in certain positions, we then look to who Liverpool are more likely to sign than anybody else at this current stage. Mamardashvili from Valencia. The Georgian goalkeeper, 23 years old. honestly seen as one of the bright stars coming forward in that position. Bags of potential, decent level of experience, both nationally and at club level. Obviously, consistently in sort of European football. It's a very, very strong building block for a young goalkeeper. However, is that the position that Liverpool need to fill right at this second? You've got, in my eyes, and again, funnily enough, I'm going to be biased, you've got the best keeper in the world currently in your starting 11. God knows how much longer he's going to go on. He could go for another 5 years. He could go for another 3. He could only go for another year. We don't know. That's the point of it, right? You can never really tell when they're going to drop off. But not only have you got him, and I get that the whole thing behind the signing is that you'd loan him back out, but you have Quillan Kelleher, who, again, to me, is probably the best number 2 in the league. Like, as a goalkeeper, I can't think of many better. You're talking about the Irish national goalkeeper. Every time he comes in, he's absolutely bossed it. He's won cup finals almost single-handedly. Incredible saves. Filled a very, very large void of Alisson Becker last season. And I think Alisson only just pipped him for appearances last season. It was very, very much a 50-50 season. And the only trophy that Liverpool ended up winning, he was in goal for. And he's done it time and time again. He's won penalty shootouts for the club. That boy has earned his stripes in no other way that you can want. So I think to be looking to potentially sign a replacement number 1 is... I mean, if I was Quillan Kelleher, I'd be pissed off. You'd be looking out the door. Maybe he is looking out the door already. I mean, I think he's clearly at the standard where he could be a number 1 elsewhere in the Premier League. Honestly, I think you take away the top 4 clubs, he would probably get into most other teams. So I can understand why you'd maybe in the long term look to replace that by bringing in a Mamardashvili, loaning him out to, I believe, Bournemouth are the favourites at the minute, which is fucking crazy having a keeper that standard at Bournemouth. But I guess it's prepping for the future. Is it the most essential thing that Liverpool could be spending their money on right now? I don't believe it is. And then we come to the obvious outgoings that have been happening now. A few players have gone out on loan. Obviously the likes of Ben Doak are looking like they're going to be leaving the club as well. And then we come on to the outgoings. Now, I've obviously touched on these earlier on, but the likes of Bobby Clark going to Salzburg for 10 million. Again, I think that's honestly a good deal all ends up. Bobby Clark isn't going to get first-team football at Liverpool at this stage. He goes there to an Austrian side, probably got a half-decent chance of winning some trophies, going to play Champions League football, gets to link back up with Pep Lijnders, and I believe Liverpool get a 17.5% sell-on clause, so if he does become the player, which I genuinely believe he could be, I think there is a very talented boy in there, Liverpool are going to be quids in. It's not exactly the end of the world. But losing that and losing a Bajcetic potentially as well on loan, it is cause for concern. And then the biggest one, which actually came out today, Luis Diaz situation. Now, this has been rumbling for a little while now. There was the whole thing with Man City, where supposedly there was a deal agreed. I personally think that was bollocks. And clearly there's cadence to that. Both clubs have come out and said that it was never on the cards. But there's clearly a contract issue there. And let's be honest, Luis Diaz isn't the only player that has a slight contract situation going on at the minute at the club, is he? Looking at the likes of Trent, Virgil, Alisson, all big players coming towards the end of their contracts soon, need to get them wrapped up. But there's been supposed stallings on the Luis Diaz one, and Barcelona have shown interest. We know how South American players tend to love to go to these Spanish clubs. You've seen it with the likes of Coutinho in years gone by. Players don't turn down Barcelona and Real Madrid, generally speaking. So if you can't lock down a contract with Diaz, if you want to keep him, I know there's been rumours of him potentially going out the door anyway, and with the likes of Gordon potentially coming in, I don't think that's going to happen personally, but there's, the rumour mill keeps going and chugging along as it would. But it's a very concerning position for Liverpool to be in. It seems as if they're getting towards a stage where they can't attract anyone. They might not necessarily be able to keep their own players much longer. Potentially, I think the big one would be if Trent went. That would be a real symbolic sign of this is done. But again, Diaz going out the door. If these are players that are walking into your competitors, they're probably half decent, and you need to look at a way to replace them. Let's be honest, Liverpool don't replace players by buying star players. Liverpool buy good players and make them great players. That is the way that club has honestly been for as long as I can remember it. The only quote-unquote world-class player that Liverpool have bought at their peak that I can think of is Thiago. Genuinely, everyone else that they have signed in recent years has developed into either a great player or a world-class player. So, knowing that you're going to potentially remove these players, I don't think Diaz is world-class, but these players that are clearly good enough for competitors is a concern, especially when there's nothing coming in the other way. Anyways, we'll wrap this one up here. Are any of you guys concerned about Liverpool's movement in the market? I'm not just talking about not signing players, which clearly they're struggling to do at the minute, or identify who they want to sign. I'm on about the movement of potential big assets from the club. Is it showing a statement of, yeah, it's kind of over? Or is there going to be a sudden resurgence where we re-sign everyone and everybody stays on long contracts and we're all happy and hunky-dory and we win loads of trophies? Let me know what you guys think all down below. Again, if you aren't already subscribed, please do consider it. We are trying to hit 1,000 by the end of the year, so if we can do that, chef's kiss. But yeah, thank you ever so much for watching. Hopefully see you in the next one.